I know that President Trump has given the executive order, and the courts have ruled. Has the courts, have they ruled on anything that the Trump administration has rejected and or not followed?
No, not really. It's all very preliminary. I mean, the background, as we know, is that the Trump administration's order has two parts. He halted immigration from 7 countries, Iran, Iraq, and 5 others, for 90 days. And he stopped resettlement of all refugees for 120 days. So what happens then is the lawsuits come in, and the judges around the country, Boston, New York, there in Brooklyn, and others have not said, all right, this order is illegal or unconstitutional. Instead, they are simply responding favorably to the statements by some of these people stuck in airports along the lines of, hey, if you enforce the president's order and I'm sent back home, they're going to kill me. And so the judges are saying, I sense irreparable injury, so we're going to take it slowly, have a hearing in some cases on Thursday, have further briefing. So no definitive answer right now, but the judges are putting it on hold.
It's been reported that President Bush did something similar after 9/11. It's been reported that President Obama has done some things where banning certain people from a country for a certain amount of time. It seems like Donald Trump, as president, does have the authority to do what he did.
He does. Back in December 2015, President Obama signed a law restricting travel by people who had visited Iran, Iraq, Sudan, a few other countries, essentially the same countries. And President Trump's response is, I'm just following this template. There are 40 countries around the world with Muslim majorities. I'm not going after all 40. I'm going after these 7 where people tend to harbor terrorists in the view of the president. But there are laws that restrict the president's power. Federal law lets the president make decisions about people coming into the country subject to a 1965 amendment that says you can't discriminate based on race and sex and nationality. So that is the push and the pull that the judges are going to have to sort out over the next few weeks.
All right, so let's talk about that, Royal Oaks, because it's being reported that he's saying these countries should be given preferential treatment to Christians, and the administration says that's not true.
Right. I think what's happening here is that people are looking at the effect of the order, and they are saying the way the Trump administration is implementing and enforcing it is discriminatory because he's giving an advantage to Christians. The Trump administration is saying, no, it's a case-by-case deal. If we can see people who are demonstrating that, in fact, they don't pose a risk to the United States, we will let them in. So essentially, there's an argument as to whether it is discriminatory against one religion, but there hasn't been any conclusion reached on that issue.
What about the green cards? Because that was a whole other side of this that seems so confusing. They were involved, now they're not involved. Where's all that stand?
Well, it's confusing because Reince Priebus, the chief of staff, came out and initially said, of course not, green card folks are not going to be covered by this, but then a few hours later he said, yeah, they are. So I think that the Trump administration is still sorting out some important details pertaining to the order. A big heads up was not given to agencies around the world, and as a result, when these orders launched, people were literally in the air, they were at airports. You've got 4,000 lawyers streaming to airports around the country volunteering to assist these people. There's just a lot that has to be sorted out.
One of the things that President Trump has been criticized for is the conflicts of interest, and it was very quickly brought up that these 7 countries, and as president, he can choose whatever countries he wants to include on this, but Saudi Arabia, where most terrorists came from, is not on the ban, and many people say, well, isn't it interesting that he has business dealings in these countries that aren't on this list? I don't know if that's a legal question, but a political question, but many people talk about that conflict of interest that is such at the heart of Donald Trump's administration.
Yeah, and of course the Trump tentacles in a business sense extend so far throughout the world. You're going to see this kind of issue come up a lot. Again, to get back to this issue of what President Obama did, President Trump can rely on the fact that, hey, we're using the exact same list of 7 countries, Iran, Iraq, Sudan, Syria, Libya, Somalia, Yemen, the same list that President Obama focused on in December 2015. And, of course, as a practical matter, Saudi Arabia traditionally has been a strong ally of the United States. So just from a let's get along with our friends standpoint, you can see why both administrations would carve out Saudi Arabia in spite of, as you say, a clear connection between some terrorists over the years and Saudi Arabia.
So, Royal Oaks, where where does this go from here? The Democrats saying what they're saying is not that strange. They're against it. But many Republicans are coming out critical of the administration and what Donald Trump has said, even some supporters of Donald Trump. So legally and otherwise, where do you see this going from here?
Yeah, it's just going to run its course in the courts and in the legislature. We're going to be seeing hearings in the next few weeks on the judge's various orders. But in the U.S. Senate, as you suggest, John McCain and Lindsey Graham, Republicans, have come out yesterday over the weekend saying this order may help recruit terrorists. And on the Democrat side, New York's Senator Schumer is introducing a law today to overturn Trump's orders, and Senator Feinstein of California is introducing a law to rescind his weekend orders and to, in general, going forward, limit his power in this area.
Isn't it interesting how one group was so offended by President Obama's executive orders, and they're not so offended by President Trump's executive orders, and vice versa?
I'm sure that issue is going to be injected into the debate in the near future, and it's just something that's really going to it may overwhelm the other big news story we're going to see this week, namely the president either today, tomorrow, maybe Thursday will announce his pick for the Supreme Court. People are going to have divided interest in terms of these two huge stories.
It's only a 120-day travel ban for some of these countries. These courts are probably going to have to rule here pretty quick, or the 120-day ban is going to be over with.
Well, that's right. And, of course, we're having hearings in some of the cases this Thursday on whether somebody should be allowed to stay in the country or will they be sent back. And then within the next month or so after these immediate hearings for temporary restraining orders, emergency action, you're going to see more or complete briefing and oral arguments in front of these judges in the next month or so. So you're right. Everybody's going to have to move very quickly or else events will just overtake them.
I only have a short time, Royal Oaks, but President Bush did something similar, and President Obama did something similar as well, correct?
Well, that's right. President Bush imposed travel restrictions back several years ago, 2011 and 2015. We've seen actions by President Obama, and so that's one of the things President Trump can point to as a precedent justifying his decision.
Yeah, Royal Oaks, interesting times. ABC News legal analyst in Los Angeles. Royal Oaks, thanks for your time.
You bet.
657, Big 550, KTRS. May you live in interesting times, right? Coming up next hour, Carissa Pavlika from TV Fanatic